What's up, guys? I've spent the last couple of years trying out different radio options, some that are mounted in the truck, some that are portable, and different power levels, all the things. And I have some different opinions and hopefully some advice for you when it comes to picking out a good GMRS radio for whether it's overland travel, camping, dirt biking, snow biking, any of the things. I'll kind of give you my opinion on all of it. But here, let's discuss the Midland MicroMobile kind of built-in installed radios versus a handheld portable radio. For the most part, we're just going to talk about three different radios. So two of which are the Midland MicroMobiles. One I have installed in the truck is the 115. I'm going to recommend a different one. And then your most extreme Midland is the MXT575. We're going to talk about that one. That's like your craziest built-in installed one. And then we're also going to talk about the Rockie Talkie 5-watt GMRS handheld radio. And let's go through some specs and different pros and cons for each of those. So in case you're not familiar at all, the Midland MicroMobiles are a GMRS radio designed to be installed in a car. So you can directly wire it in. You can use, they all come with a 12-volt socket plug. That's where mine's plugged into my center console with a 12-volt socket plug. So it's powered off the car. You mount it somewhere. You run an antenna outside of the vehicle as well. So you have to wire it all, and you have to run the antenna to your hood or to your roof or somewhere else so that you get better signal outside the vehicle. They've concised them down in the last couple of years, but Midland offers a couple of different model options for their MicroMobiles. The lowest tier, the one I have installed in my truck, is the MXT115 is the model number. And it's a 15-watt radio. So radios are kind of based off of power and range and like their overall capabilities by watts. And so this one is a 15-watt. Just for reference, Rockie Talkie this is a fancy one. It's a 5-watt. And then something like your traditional two-way radio, whether that be a low-grade Midland or a Motorola, just your classic walkie-talkie, those are almost always 2 watts. So the MXT115 is a 15-watt radio. So the MicroMobiles, like I said, come in a bunch of different power levels, but they also come in two different styles, you could almost say. And so one style being that the box or the receiver has all the controls, it has the volume adjustments, and it has an LCD screen where you're actually controlling everything. So that box has to be visible so that you can do the changes, and then your mic just has a few very small controls on it. And then their other style moves all of that to the handheld mic. This is something I did not know when I first bought my MXT115. And so their other models, it's right on the mic. You have all your controls, a screen, everything that you can see and need right off the mic. And so the actual box itself can be mounted under a seat or tucked in a center console where you don't need access to it. And it just keeps things a little bit cleaner. So for the sake of talking about the MX115, what I would recommend instead, if this is the route you're going, is the MXT275. The specs and the power are identical. It's also a 15-watt, and even the price is the same. So it's also $165, but it just moves all the controls to the mic. And there's a reason they make both. Maybe that's not for you, but that's just been my recommendation for any of the MicroMobiles, is I would highly consider getting the ones that have all the controls on the mic, so you can hide that box away, tuck it under a seat or something, and just have all your controls quick right there and easy. So this is the lowest price you can get to get into an actual built-in radio is their 275 or 115. Again, I'm gonna just recommend the 275. And like I mentioned a second ago, it's $165, but that's just for the radio. And there's a few other things that are helpful if you're actually gonna install it and do it right. And so one thing I recommend is to upgrade to their Ghost antenna. So it's a short little stubby antenna. I have one mounted on my truck, and it gets way better reception, and it's easier to connect into some of their mounting options than the one that it comes with. The one it comes with is magnetic, and you have to mount on a magnetic plate, and they don't stay on very good, and your range isn't as good either. And then the other accessory I recommend is, depending on where you want to mount it, I chose to do their truck lip mount. And so it literally kind of clicks on the inside of your hood, and then you do a set screw to kind of hold it in there. And that's way more secure than the magnet version, in my opinion. The stubby antenna is real short and sleek. And you can run it on your roof too. There's different mounting options from Roof Racks and other companies that have accessories for it. But quick and easy, you can get right through the firewall and get access to your hood really easy. So the Ghost antenna and the truck lip mount is something that I would recommend to you. And so if you do that, your Ghost antenna is $50 and the truck lip mount is another 30. So if you're gonna do it that way, it puts you at 245. So that's kind of your pricing on a lower end MicroMobile. So moving on to the next radio option, the next one is still a MicroMobile from Midland, but it's their 575. So this is their biggest, baddest one that they offer. It has 50 watts of total power, so it's gonna be your best capacity, and it's gonna be the clearest, all that good stuff. But you also pay the heaviest price for that one. So this one is $400 just for the radio itself. And then just like the other one I talked about, if you want to do a good setup where it works well and it's sleek, you do the $50 ghost antenna and then the $30 truck lip mount as an option. Even if you're not truck hood mounting it with the truck lip, if you have to get a roof rack mount or something else, you're going to be at least 30 bucks. So the pricing is going to be pretty similar no matter where you mount it. But that puts you at $480 for that one. So again, the first one, the 275, puts you about $245 in price, and then this one would jump all the way to $480, but it gets you 50 watts of power. So if you're really committed to doing kind of a built-in system, and that's kind of the way you're leaning, if you have the cash, I would totally spend it on the better one. I have not had the 50 watt ones installed in my truck, but I have used them a bunch. At work, that's the radio of choice that we decide to install in our Expedition trucks. And I did not realize how much more powerful and how much more clear a 50 watt radio would be. And so you kind of think that 50 watts, oh, maybe I don't need that much range, but it's actually not about the range. For me, it was more about the crystal clearness of the 50 watt radio coming through. And so when we've used those 50 watt radios, it is like crystal clear, like you're talking to someone in person, or about as close as it can get to a radio. You know how traditional two-way radio is all staticky and sometimes the signal's just not that good. And then even on some of these lower watted ones, even on the Midland I have, it's just not, it's a little bit grainy like all radios are. I've never heard as crystal clear of a radio as the 50 watt Midland. And then the last radio we'll hit some specs on is the Rockie Talkie 5 watt radio. So Rockie Talkie's been around for a few years. They first came out with a standard like 2 watt radio. It was still rugged and overbuilt in a good way, but then just like, it's maybe been a year or two, they came out with a 5 watt version that is like seriously put some heat on the competition. And this is a really, really cool portable radio. So part of the reason I initially installed a MicroMobile in my truck, this didn't exist yet, was because I knew that the traditional battery life on a two-way radio was like half a day, a full day at most, and I just didn't want to have to worry about charging it. And so I liked the idea of having it running off of my truck. But now it's just not as relevant. They recharge with USB-C. Everything I own runs off of USB-C now. And this has a 5-day battery life. So that, depending on how much you're using it, that can vary. That's what they say on the website, and I've found it to be true. I've used the crap out of these things, and honestly, I would say it's even more than 5 days most of the time that these will run, which is crazy. Part of the reason behind that is just this really simple LCD screen. So I don't even know if LCD is the right word, but it's not like your traditional, like the whole thing is lit up. It's just only the numbers and your information is lit up. And so it just doesn't pull a whole lot of power as far as like the controls and the screen and stuff. One cool feature of the Rockie Talkie is that it comes with some different antenna options. So you get this short stubby one that is my favorite. If I have this on my person, then I definitely like the short one because it doesn't get in the way, or it just unscrews off. And then when you buy this, it comes with these two. So you then have this longer one that just gets you some better range, and it's flexible, still stays out of the way pretty well. This one would be a good one if just set in your truck or in your cup holder because it's still pretty small. And then I forgot to grab it off my desk, but then they also offer, it's 30 bucks, they offer an extended one that's like this big, it's red, it's really skinny, and then that's the one that we choose to use for dirt biking and snow biking. I should have just brought all this gear to show you, but when these radios are in my backpack for dirt biking or snow biking, the radio mounts inside the pack, and then your antenna gets stuffed inside there and your reception isn't as good. And so their really long one, their extra big one, will actually come out of the top of my pack, which gives you a lot better reception when you're riding dirt bikes and stuff. It's actually a very similar concept to what you're doing with the MicroMobiles. The whole point is to get the antenna out of the truck, so on the hood or on the roof. That's kind of what I'm doing with these two, is the big long one sticks out of your pack, gets you kind of open the open air. So the Rockie Talkie is technically your cheapest option. These are $180, which is expensive for a two-way radio, but technically out of the options, it is the cheapest. So that's some of the specs on all three of these. Now let's just get into some comparisons. There's really not a right answer to this. Like, all three of these could be right for different people. And so here's kind of my thoughts on it. So I think from a budget perspective, the MXT275 and the Rockie Talkie are obviously your best budget options. They just serve two different purposes. So if you're really dead set on the having it installed in your truck thing, then the MXT275 is your budget option. But if you want the versatility of something that can move around, I definitely think the Rockie Talkie is where it's at for the budget option. So even though this one is 5 watts and the MXT275 is 15 watts, the reason I'm comparing them so closely is because even though the 275 is technically 3 times the watt power of this one, it doesn't really seem like it. And so it's been my experience over the last year or two testing both of them that, like, yes, I get a little bit more range out of the 115 that I have in here, but not by much. And then as far as like the clearness of it, they're about the same. So even though it's 3 times more, I feel like this is just as clear. And then one downside I've seen is that my MXT is actually kind of quiet. Like, even with the volume up all the way, sometimes it's not quite as loud as I would want. Whereas this on level 10 is usually louder than I want in any situation. Even snow biking, if I'm riding, I can usually hear someone calling me on level 10 because the volume's so high on this one. So in some situations, you could say your very best, your highest option that you can get is the MXT575. It is miles clearer than anything I've ever heard. Your range is gonna be exceptional. And so it's definitely your best of the best option. But environments can still have a big play on that. And so whether it's a 5 watt radio or a 50 watt Midland, if there is a mountain, a big mountain between, and you're in a gully, the person you're trying to communicate with is in a gully on the other side, it does not matter how many watts you have. Like, there is a point where obstructions just take hold of everything at that point. And so it just depends on the terrain you're gonna be in. If you're like really like flat lands and miles and miles and miles apart, and you need just insane like straight line reception to someone else, then yeah, get the highest power 50 watt Midland you can. But if you're in the backcountry for stuff like this, where it's overlanding and camping and you're with buddies and you're somewhat close together, usually 5 watts, even in a handheld, is usually enough to communicate very well. So having spent money and having tried all three of these for the last year or two, here's my recommendation. If you're deciding between the 275 and the Rockie Talkie, the 5 watt Rockie Talkie, I would lean this way because I feel like the gap between the two is not very good. And so if you don't care that much about having it installed in your truck, and you don't care about looking cool with a little stubby antenna to call yourself an overlander, I did at one point, that's why I did it, now I don't care anymore, I would definitely lean this way. It's overall cheaper, the reception is almost as good, same clearness, and that's kind of where I would lean unless you're dead set on having installed your vehicle. It's still a great unit, don't get me wrong. I just think for having to take the hassle to install, it's not portable, and it not sounding or being much better than this, I would just lean this way if that's what you're deciding. If you want an installed option, then the 575, if you can spring for it, is definitely my recommendation there. If I were to do it all over again, I would not be buying the smaller unit. I would either be only using these, or I would still have these and install the 575. Would be like the ultimate setup in my opinion. So for anyone leaning towards the MicroMobile direction, let me just show you how I installed mine so you have an idea if you're kind of confused on how they get installed. Here is the ghost antenna right there on the hood, and then this is the trucklet mount. So you can see it goes there, and then it just hooks under the hood, and then there's a little set screw that you just tighten from the bottom that tightens that really good. And then I've never been worried. I go through car washes, do whatever I need to. That thing has never came off or been in the way or anything. And then when you mount here, the wiring is super easy because I can just kind of tuck it up in my engine bay, and then I just ran the wires through my firewall. So it just comes under there somewhere. Honestly, I don't even remember where I ran it. And then I just have mine mounted right here. So I have mine just magnets to a magnetic gun mount. I get those on Amazon. I tend to put them everywhere because it's just nice to be able to magnet stuff to them. So this is the unit itself. And so this is obviously, like I said, this is the one where all your controls have to be here. And then I just ran it. I happen to have a 12-volt plug in my center console. Don't even know if you can really see it, but down there is kind of where I just run it to. And then this functions whether my truck is on or off, so I can turn it on like that. And then it doesn't pull much power, so I'm not super worried about draining my starter battery. They also give you one of these mic holders, so they just can be 3M'd or screwed in, and they can go wherever. So I kept mine down here low, but a lot of guys mount them up here or in different places that you have quick access to that mic. So like I was saying, on those different styled ones where everything's right here on the mic itself, you can completely eliminate having this in your way. So it can go under the seat over here. You can side mount it to your center console anywhere you want. And then you literally just have a microphone that you can do all the controls on. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful to you. I wish I would have had some of this information when I decided to start spending money. You know how it is. Sometimes you just got to spend the money and figure it out. I guess that's part of why I do this, is to help hopefully save you a little bit of money. Sometimes I probably spend your money too by telling you about cool things that I'm excited about. But either way, it's all good stuff. Hopefully that helps you with your radio decision, your GMRS radios. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next time.